Okay, I think we'll get started. A good day to everyone, and thank you for joining today's SAMPS webinar. My name is David Weber. I sit on the SAMPS Board of Directors, and I'll be your moderator today. If I can have the next slide, please. First, a bit of a commercial about SAMPS. SAMPS is a nonprofit and all-volunteer organization founded in 2012. As you can see, we have over 1,250 members and about 20 sponsors. And our mission is really about connecting and empowering people such as yourself, sales and marketing professionals in the life science and research, to enable you to improve your career and hopefully learn some new skills and meet some new people. We do this by hosting webinars such as the one you're attending today, but also a number of other events, networking opportunities, a job board, and a blog. And I hope you check out our website. In addition, we host 2 annual meetings. Although we haven't for the last few years due to the pandemic, we are commencing that again this year. In fact, our first one is in Glasgow, Scotland, in about a month. And it's focused on a really exciting topic of artificial intelligence. And those of you who have access to Glasgow and can be there or attending a meeting there perhaps around the same time should try to attend. We'll also do one in Boston in December. And we do conduct annual awards to recognize top sales and marketing professionals and programs and campaigns in the industry. And we'll do that towards the end of the year. So stay tuned for more on that. Membership is free. So if you're not a member, please join. If you are a member, please pass the appropriate information about membership on to your colleagues so they can take advantage of a SAMPS membership. Today's webinar revolves around the important skills of creating and delivering compelling presentations which result in you obtaining your desired outcomes from your sales and marketing initiatives. Frankly, in my experience in this industry, this skill set often needs considerable improvement and polish. And I'm sure you'll agree, you've been to many, many presentations from scientists, from your colleagues that are real sleepers. And I hope through this webinar, you'll get some skills and some gems will come out of this that will enable you to improve your presentation and storytelling skills, which in my view are very, very important to be successful in this industry. So to help us in this area, I'd like to introduce Susan Garrity Bish. Having worked with Susan over many, many years, I know she's passionate about helping people learn, apply, and benefit from communication skills that enhance one's career. She's the co-founder and managing partner of Bottom Line Technologies, a consulting firm that has played a leading role in equipping global leaders for success. Before starting her consulting business, she held key roles in leading companies in healthcare and medical devices. Today, the majority of her clients are in fact in our industry, so she has an appreciation for what we do on a day-to-day basis. With that intro, I'm going to turn the program over to Susan to get on with the webinar. If you have questions that you'd like Susan or I, for that matter, to address during the webinar, please use the Zoom chat feature at the bottom of your screen. In addition, you should have received a workbook by email that will help you with your future presentations and storytelling. In case you don't, I will share the link to the workbook through Zoom's chat function. And in fact, it may already be there. So with that in mind, let me turn the program over to Susan and let's get on with the webinar. Susan.
Thanks so much, David. Great to see you and welcome everybody. I'm glad to be here today with you. As David said, my goal today is making sure that in the hour of time you're investing with us today at SAMPS, that you will have 2 or 3 great things you can take away and use immediately so that you can differentiate yourself as a distinguished presenter. I do believe it's a career building tool. In fact, I'm going to tell you a quick story. There was a guy, let's call him Dave, that I worked with early on in my career, who was a fabulous, fabulous presenter. He could get the audience around his little finger in no time. He was a great storyteller. He could evoke emotion. He would weave things together. And his career soared because of his presentation skills. Sadly, Dave was not very good at the rest of his job, and his career plateaued at this level. I hired a young woman who did not have as many credentials as some other people in our department, and people said, "You're taking a risk. She's not a great presenter. She doesn't have the skills. I worked with her. I really helped her develop her competence, her confidence. And over the course of about 3 years, not only did she do a great job, she received the recognition and attention from others because of her presentation skills. And her career went like this. While the first guy, who was a great presenter with no skills, just flat, it didn't go down. It just flattened out. So my hope for you is that you will be able to find things that you can use today that will really make a difference in your career. So this workshop has been evolving. Gosh, I don't know, David, what, 20 years we've been doing these workshops. And we've written a book on this called Clear, Concise, and Compelling, How to Change Minds and Influence Outcomes. And of course, over the last 3 years, this has been modified again because we've had to learn how to do virtual presentations. And so we now offer 2 different versions of this workshop for those who are doing workshops in person and those who are doing virtual. Today, we are going to be focusing on the virtual technical presentation, probably one of the greatest antidotes to insomnia ever, technical presentations, right? How many dull, dry, and boring technical presentations have you all seen? I don't want you to be that presenter. So I want you to first start out by opening up the chat box, if you will. Why do you think we need to rethink technical presentations in this new, well, 3-year-old virtual world? Do me a favor and just type in a comment or 2. Why do we have to do things differently when presenting virtually, especially with technical presentations? Jenny, good to see you. Adrian, yes. All right. You are all on the right track here. When you can't see the faces, right, Erica, it's hard to really anticipate, are they getting it? Are they skeptical? Are they confused? Are they with you? Are they supportive? When nonverbal communication, Duncan, it's lost when we can't see people. We don't get feedback. Feedback is very important to a presenter. When we're presenting live, we're constantly reading the faces of those in the audience and their body language, how they're slumped over or engaged. Is their hand on their chin? Are they really in this with us? So we don't get that feedback. It's hard for them to ask questions, but they can put them in the chat box, and we do encourage that today, and we will get to those. So you're all right on track. There are so many reasons why we have to do things differently, and we'll get to some of those today. By the way, this workshop, the virtual workshop, is 2 2-hour sessions. We won't cover everything that we would normally cover in that workshop, but I'm going to hit the highlights, and I hope that you'll find many gems here. What we are going to talk about is how to design an audience-centric presentation that really grabs and keeps the audience attention. We're going to talk about creating specific presentation objectives. What do you want your audience to know, feel, and do? We'll talk a little bit about how do you take those complex technical slides and make them clear, concise, and compelling. And then how do you deliver so that you're competent and confident and you are in control of delivering the message in a way that you know the audience will be most receptive? So we'll focus on 2 separate pieces. They're kind of 2 components. How do you design and how do you deliver? For our time together today, which is never enough time, first of all, I wish we could be in person. That would be a lot more fun. But we're not, and we're going to make the best of this, just as I'm going to show you how to make the best of a virtual technical presentation. So while we're going through this today, I would like for each of you to have top of mind a technical virtual presentation you have either recently given or soon will be giving, so that you can apply the concepts that we'll discuss today. Just kind of, how would I put this to work? That's where I would really like you to go with this. Okay, I'll give you a minute. You got one? All right. We're going to start on page 2 in the workbook. By the way, David mentioned that this is a resource for you, a reference manual. Take notes, and I'm hoping you'll go back and use this again and again. I also hope you'll use the contact information to call me and we can put together something for your team. Let's start with an audience-centric presentation. Now, some of you give some presentations maybe to multiple different audiences, same content. Well, guess what? It shouldn't be the same presentation. If the audience is different, we need to tailor the same content for each unique audience. Therefore, I'm encouraging each of you to do something I call taking advantage of the golden 15 minutes. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you do a presentation? Whether it's a customer-facing presentation, an internal presentation to your board of directors, to your team, to your boss and direct reports. The answer is always yes, I'd love to present and share information, but there should also be a but. I'd love to, but I will need 15 minutes of your time before I can put the presentation together so that I can create a presentation that's a custom fit for you and the audience you'll be inviting. Golden 15 minutes. What are you going to get out of that? Well, first of all, you want to know who is going to be attending. Find out a little bit about their background. What is their knowledge of and experience with your topic? Are they neophytes to this? Do they have a lot of knowledge? And what do they need to know? What do they think they know that they may not know? Those are some other questions you might want to ask. And why are they giving you their time? Each of you, all 56 of you, have invested an hour of your time today in the hopes that you're going to get something, right? Well, that would be good for me to know, wouldn't it? Is what do you want to get out of this presentation? In this case, this is a webinar, but a little bit different. When you are inviting people to a presentation, I want you to think about this as you need to deliver what I call high ROTI, high return on time invested. We want everybody to, at the end of your presentation, say, wow, that was really valuable. I am so glad that I carved time out of my day for this. That is what you need to know, is what are they hoping to get from the time they're investing with you? What are their problems, concerns, and challenges relative to your topic? How receptive do you think there will be? Might there be people with different perspectives than yours? Good to know. We want to bring people together. And then this is really critical. How does your topic affect the audience basics needs to either fix, accomplish, or avoid something? Most people are motivated by one of those big 3 buckets of motivators. We want to fix something. In this case, your audience might want to fix a lengthy process, shorten that down. They might want to stop wasting resources or stretch resources further. Those are things people might want to fix. What about accomplish? Sometimes people are motivated by accomplishing something, such as higher throughput or greater repeatability of experiments in a lab, for instance. Or perhaps people are trying to avoid something like risk or downtime. So it's important for you as the presenter to know what the primary audience motivator might be. Now, granted, your audience might be diverse. It might be a variety of these things, but pretty typically you can narrow it down to one of these 3 things. Why is this important? You want to use language and examples that really align with your audience's motivators. So if you have identified that your audience is primarily about avoiding risk, you will provide examples that show what those risks are, what the implications of those risks are, and then how you can help them avoid those risks. So getting into the audience mindset by using that golden 15 minutes is absolutely crucial. Now, I've coached people and I've gotten feedback on what they feel is the benefit from the golden 15 minutes. And I hear a number of things. Number 1, obviously, I can get a custom fit for my audience. Number 2, I can get rid of a lot of slides and topics that I would normally leave in not knowing what their main interest is. I can trim down my presentation. And the third thing is it increases the presenter's confidence. If I know what my audience is primarily looking for, why it's of importance to them, what they hope to get from this, then I know that I'm going to be able to present something that is very impactful and meaningful for my audience. So that's tip number 1. Really focus on that golden 15 minutes. Make sure you invest that time. Find out what people want to fix, accomplish, and avoid. Trim down your presentations. Now, on page 3, I want to start with something else. A lot of people, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because I can't see you, which is one of the bad things about this format. But I ask this often. How many of you, when you're creating a new presentation, begin by opening a deck or opening a deck marketing sent you, marketing created, so that you can modify and customize that? Many of us do. Guess what? You're wasting time. Stop doing that. Before you ever open a deck, I want you to stop, write it down, open some kind of a file and capture a few things. Number one, why is your topic important to this audience? Make a couple of notes. It won't take you long. Just why is it important to the audience? And then the second part of that is, why is it important to you? Even if it's a staff update, you are hoping to convey something. You're getting people to give you more support, more resources. You're asking people to put more time in on something. Why is that important to them? We need to turn that around and say, what is important to the audience? And why is it important to me? Second question, before you start designing your presentation, what do you want your audience to know, feel, and do? Seriously, what do you want them to know, feel, and do? You need to answer those three questions as well, because that will help you tailor your presentation and make it a custom fit for that unique audience. And from understanding the why and the know, feel, and do, you can then create your unique presentation objective for this presentation. So you're going to put some thought into this. Some people can do this very quickly. It might take 5 minutes. Others of you may want to really let that marinate and ponder this for a little while. But my advice to you, do not start to create your presentation until you have addressed what is the why, what is the know, feel, and do, and then summarize that, synthesize that into what is your objective. So here's your direct application opportunity. On the bottom of page 3, actually, you can put the answers anywhere on page 3. For that presentation, I ask you to be focusing on what's the why. For that presentation, what do you want people to know, feel, and do? And then lastly, how do you distill that down into what is the presentation objective for this presentation? I'll be quiet for a moment as you make some notes on page 3. Okay, let's move on to page 4. And I want to talk a little bit about virtual technical presentations. What are some of the fundamentals here? Because I think we need to get this straight before we start designing the presentation, because you'll design some of this in. Number one, in this virtual hybrid world we're living in now, one thing that I think we've all learned is that engagement is the cornerstone. When you are designing a virtual technical presentation, figure out, how can I design engagement into the presentation? We started today by asking you to be engaged via the chat box. Another way to engage is to start with a poll. During your presentation, you can often use a whiteboard feature. That's also engaging. You can do brainstorming. You can do breakout sessions for small group interaction. Whatever it is that you find works for your topic, make sure that you're building that into your presentation. Secondly, in addition to engagement, it's important to connect left brain, right brain, logically and emotionally. I know in the life sciences world, we tend to deal with a lot of people who primarily are left-brained. That's great. But guess what? The way our brains work, we cannot make decisions without engaging the emotive or emotional part of the brain. So we cannot, to be clear, concise, and compelling, cannot just appeal to the left brain. We need to appeal to both. So y'all are probably experts at doing the whole left brain thing. Facts, charts, data, flow charts, if-then examples, providing proof examples, case studies. You're probably great at doing all of those things. Now, sales and marketing people tend to be also pretty good at the emotional piece. And how do we do that? Well, strong visuals with people. Faces. Faces are what evoke emotion. Faces that are inquisitive, faces that are happy, faces that are puzzled, faces that are skeptical, faces that are demonstrating a challenge. But wherever you can, use faces. That helps people to really relate to your topic. Focus on the human content of whatever it is that you're discussing or presenting. Do the which means that this is how it will impact your team, your customers, your patients, the people in your lab. Always talk about the human impact, the human content. Ask emotion questions. How does this make you feel? Or how do you feel about this? Or what are you sensing with this? So as you're designing your presentation, remember there's design and deliver. We're still on the design piece. Think about, obviously, we want to start with the objective, the no, feel, do. We want to design in the engagement, and then we want to figure out how do I intentionally connect both logically and emotionally. The next thing I would encourage you to do from a design standpoint is always focus your presentation on solving a challenging problem. People love to solve problems. Have you ever noticed when you're trying to talk things out with somebody, your friends, your family members, your colleagues, they want to help you solve something. Well, this is your opportunity to engage people. So present your topic in a way that first starts with, here's a problem, and then you can present your solution, and then we'll talk about the result of your solution. We call that the problem, solution, result format. We'll get to more on that in a moment. So make sure that you're engaging people by getting their brains going about how do we solve this? And then the last thing is make sure that you're being very clear. Make your case. If you've identified your objective for your presentation, you're 2/3 of the way there. You know what you want to accomplish with your presentation. Do not shy away from being very direct about what it is that you want your audience to do at the end of your presentation. Okay. Those are some fundamentals when you think about designing your presentation. Remember, we haven't opened a slide deck yet. We have not gotten there. So you're still thinking about the objective, the no, feel, do, how do I engage people? Now, on page 5, we're going to get to, I've got a question for you first though. About how many hours does it take you to design and prepare for presentation? You can put that in the chat box. A brand new presentation, new audience. How many hours roughly does that take you? 2, 5, 8? Share a number with us.
Susan, while people are doing that, a question came through that I thought this might be an appropriate time to address. And that question is, how can presenters best use these recommendations that you're providing when they're often provided a template by management, let's say, that is often quite dense with requested information, like a dashboard? That's the question that came through from Adrian. So I'm curious how you might think about that.
Okay, Adrian, great question. Thank you for putting that in there. Can I defer that question, Adrian, until we get to, I'm going to show you how to create slides here in a little bit. And I'm going to show you how to decomplexify. Did I make that up today? I might have. Make slides less complex. And then how do you work with, because most corporations, most organizations have their preferred template. I get that. So Adrian, I'll get back to that. Thank you very much. Okay, David, hold me to that, okay?
I will in fact do that, Susan.
All right, I'm scrolling through looking at how many hours, anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10, even 16, Mary, if it's a very complex and lengthy presentation, of course. David, 20 or more. Yeah, so you're investing a lot of time on this, right? What would you say if I could cut that down by 25%? What if I could shave, David, 5 hours off of what it would routinely take you for a major presentation? Would that be something that would be worth learning how to do differently? For most people, the answer is yes. So let me share that with you. On page 5, what you have, and it's on the screen as well, is a process that I would encourage you to use. I've been using this process for designing workshops and presentations for over 15 years. And it was a lifesaver when the light bulb went on and I discovered this process. So the first thing you want to do is start with your objective. Always start there. The second thing, this is just like when you wrote papers in university or college also. You determine what the topic is, what do I want to, what are my objectives? Then you create an outline. What are my main points? I've got maybe 4 main points. And after you create the main points, you create the proof points or whatever it is you need to support each main point. So it goes from objective to outline, plugging in the content. And then what you might want to do from a presentation standpoint is to create a presentation guide, or what you have in front of you, the workbook. This is something I do from my outline. I create the handout that people can use. When you do your presentation, you've got the objective, the outline. That outline can be a place where the people who attend your presentations can take notes. This is another way to engage your virtual audience, by the way. You give them a handout. And by the way, you can maybe copy and paste maybe 4 or 5 of the most important slides from your presentation directly into that handout or presentation guide. A lot of people will overstuff their slide decks because they say, well, I have to give my deck to my audience and I just make sure I have to have everything in there. So they jam everything in there. Well, guess what? A slide deck is not a handout and a handout is not a slide deck. Let's not confuse the two. But you can take the outline for your presentation and create a handout or a presentation guide that people can use. Then it's time for you to do your slides. Okay. Then and only then are you in a position to say, okay, I'm going to start putting my slides together. How many of you have ever looked for 15 minutes or more for the perfect image for a slide? Haven't we all done that? Absolutely. And this, if you haven't done your objective and your outline first, how many times have you later said, yeah, I don't really need that slide? 15 minutes down the drain, right? So this process that you see on the screen is going to save you time because you're not going to be investing your efforts in things you may or may not need. So resist the temptation to go to slides first. And then you can create a more in-depth handout if you need, for participants also using that handout, or actually using your outline. So bottom line, always start with your objective. Do not start with the slides. I'm hoping that's a major takeaway for a lot of you today. And then use this process. I guarantee you, I get feedback all of the time that people say, that was a game changer. Honestly, I'm spending so much less time in creating presentations because I am using this process. All right, let's move on. I mentioned this thing called the problem solution result process. And as sales and marketing professionals, this is when, as VP of marketing organizations, I taught all my staff to use this process the same. And sales, when I'm doing sales training, same thing. I'm going to bust the bubble of every product and marketing manager on the audience today. Your customers do not buy products. They don't really care so much about your products. They care about solutions to their problems. They are buying solutions, not products. So we need, as presenters, to think about things that way. People are interested in their own problems. So we need to start with, what is the problem that your audience has? Focus on that. Be attentive as people are talking and telling you about their problems. We listen to how they describe their problem. Are they wanting to fix, accomplish, or avoid something? We ask questions that allow people in the audience to tell us more about their problem so that we can then be very clear in making our case. We can then say, I understand the problem is, you reiterate the problem, and then you tell them what your solution is, and then you let them know what your solution does to fix, accomplish, or avoid that specific problem. Now, great salespeople, great marketing people do the problem and solution. You've been taught that, you know that. The great presenters, the great marketing people, the great salespeople use the result piece. Here's your problem, here's our solution, and the result is, which means that you will get greater repeatability, which means that you will have more sample to use down the line, which means that your budget will not go to waste in using this solution, which means that always humanize it. Always get to the result the audience will benefit from. This is what great presenters do. They are always talking about, this means that our department will spend 20% less time in the product development phase. It means that our product life cycle will be extended, means our funnel will be fuller. The throughput to the bottom of the funnel will be faster. Get to the which means that piece, okay? Really critical. And then be very direct. Ask for what you need in the presentation. Now, on page 6, there's a spot right there where you can, oh, by the way, here on the slide, you'll see another example. For each main point of your presentation, let's say you have 3 main points. What is the critical problem? Provide proof and an example. What is the solution for this particular problem for main point number 1? And then what's the which means that? Provide proof. This is the way to be clear, concise, and compelling with your audience. Be very direct about what the which means that piece will be. Okay, I'm going to be quiet here for a minute as you directly apply what we've just talked about for the presentation you have in mind. What is the problem? What's your solution? And what is your result? Okay, again, I'm hoping that there are a lot of major aha moments for you, that you're finding the ROTI is significant already. Let's move on and talk about slides, slide decks. Here is the big caveat I want all of you to remember. Great slides are designed to control the eyes so that you control focus and attention. Great slide decks, the slides control the eyes so that you can control focus and attention. You're focusing people where you want them to be, all right? Now I'm going to start with some bad practices, and I'm going to put my apologies in here on the slide too, because some of these are painful. I just wanted to start with, and you've probably seen some of these, but I think the first one might be the absolute worst. And this could only be done by a governmental agency, right? This is from the Defense Department somewhere. I went online and I Googled examples of complex slides. This is a brain bender right here. This is how not to do slides. 101. Okay, I can't stay on that one for too long. Here's another one. It's blurry. There's way too much information. It comes at you all at once. If I were to ask each one of you, where do your eyes go first? David, where did your eyes go first on this?
To the image.
To the image. Does that image clear in any way?
It's nothing to me.
I know. Okay. So here's an example of a slide that puts too much up. I might ask somebody else, Adrian, I might ask you, where do your eyes go? You might have said, well, model 1, or I'm still trying to figure out what modeling customer dynamics really means. And why didn't they capitalize C and D in that title? I don't know. There's so many things that are wrong with this slide. Let's do one more. Okay, this is an academic slide. I had to mask out the university name because I didn't want them to be implicated. But this is from the School of Medicine and Health Sciences. And they are actually teaching people to create slides like this. This is their template. Adrian, is this the painful kind of slide you were kind of referencing? So there are many, many bad examples, including this one, where 6-month sales cost and profit comparison with 3 different images, and I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go first. But one thing I can guarantee you, if you put up a slide like any of these, here's what people will do. They will stop listening to you. Their ears will shut off, their eyes will engage, and they will not hear another word you say, okay?
Susan, can I interrupt you a second? On a slide like this, however, if you used animation and showed one image or one graph at a time, does that that would help. Would you not agree? And is that what you would recommend here, or would you recommend 3 different slides?
You can do either way. I personally would say if you have 3 main points, make them 3 slides. One of my rules of thumb for slides is 1 main point per slide. However, if you were limited to 10 slides and you had to cram it in, then yes, I would animate this one graphic at a time.
Or if you're limited by a template, referencing Adrian's comment earlier.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Okay. So here are my 12 power tips for compelling slides, which are on page 7, by the way. Number 1, think of your slides as billboards. When you're driving down Interstate 5 in California, and if it's not jammed and clogged and you're actually moving 55 miles an hour, you only have about 3 seconds as you glance up at that billboard to let it sink in. Now, we need to design slides that are easy to absorb and understand also. Not every slide can be absorbed in 3 seconds. We should strive for that for most slides, but in some technical slides, it may take a little bit longer for the people to actually discern what it is on the slide. But think about simplifying your slide so that it's easily understood. Number 2, let's get rid of as much text and words and bullet points as we can. Here is a very traditional looking template where there's a title up at the top, organic produce demand rising, with a bunch of blah, blah, blah numbers. But you know what? The real main point of this slide is that organic produce is up. The demand is up 38%. That was buried in this slide. You couldn't get that. Here, if that's my main point, hit people between the eyeballs with the main point. If you need to add the detail, you could create a slide that might look like this. But one of the things I want you to think about is, how do I make my main point so obvious that no one can miss it? Okay. Now, old Al Einstein, when he was making PowerPoint slides back in his day, he said everything should be reduced to make it as simple as possible, but not simpler. So we need to do the same thing. How do we simplify every slide? And I'll talk to you about how we can do that. Another key point is these PowerPoint templates are set up so that there's a title up at the top. And you were supposed to put some kind of a title, like organic produce demand is up, or Gen X is efficient. Well, that's a title. Why don't we create headlines? You know what headlines are designed to do in articles and printed papers and materials? They're designed to grab your attention, grab your eyes. I want you to stop using titles. Start using headlines. I want you to put the main point of every slide in that template spot up at the top. Gen X reduces material usage 25%. Organic produce demand up 38%. So use headlines, not titles. Turn your main point into a headline for each slide. Next thing, remember I said if you've got too much content on your slide, people are going to stop listening and they're just going to start reading, because this is a basic human point of knowledge. We can read 2 times faster than somebody can speak. So if somebody puts up some text and they start reading it to me, I am not going to listen to them, because by the time they're through the first sentence, I've read all the way through the 4th. So resist the urge to put too much text on a slide, okay? And here's something you can do about it. Here's a slide that's typical, a bunch of bullet points, clear, concise, and compelling presentations, blah, 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 blah. Let's blow up the bullet points. Let's get rid of them. And instead, take every bullet point, bring them up one at a time, and then put a caption under a graphic, because we tend to remember images and then the associated words, not the other way around. I don't think most of us could have, if I asked you to say how much were avocados up 4 slides ago, I don't think you could tell me. But if I ask you to come back and say, oh, objectives are achieved, they're on target, you are believed, the brain believes that you're trusted, you're memorable because you're clear, concise, and compelling, and your company is differentiated. What we want to do is not put too much up in front of people's faces all at once. Guide the eyes to control, focus, and attention, okay? The next one is the type of slide that we see frequently in sales and marketing presentations. Lots of numbers, end of month review, quarterly review, lots and lots of numbers. These slides frustrate the heck out of me. Somebody puts up a slide like this and I look at it and I go, stop talking. I just need to look at all these numbers. Wait a minute. Where should I be looking? And then I get frustrated thinking, well, show me what's your main point here. So instead of that, crop it down, show them what the point is you want them to focus in on, and maybe a big red circle to guide their eyes so that you're saying what we're really talking about is the bottom line cost per person of $1,462. Out of our total investment, this is something that provides an ROI. You're taking the audience right where you want them. You're showing them, guiding their eyes to where you want them to be.
Susan,
here's another, yeah, David.
On a slide like that, what a lot of people do is, in addition to showing the numbers, to the right of the data, they'll list key takeaways with bullets. How do you feel about that type of approach to bring out the key takeaways from the numbers?
I'm fine as long as the bullets aren't long and they really are supportive. If you could create an image rather than a bunch of bullets, I would do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, good question. Thank you. Here's an income statement, same thing. You can put a big blue arrow, a red box, whatever it takes, but guide the eyes. Let's go back to an example of a slide I shared with you under the bad practices category. And here's the slide that showed the 3 different sales costs and profit comparison. This one, what I would take the main one and I would show that one. And then I would, again, take the eyes. Sales are up $50,000 since January and our profits are up $7,000. And then talk about it from there. What is the which means that? Which means that we're reinvesting in product design and development, which means we can afford the marketing campaign that we had put on hold in Q1 because at the end of Q2, we now have the funds that are necessary. So always get to the which means that piece. Do I sound like a broken record? I think it's that important.
And related to that, in my opinion, is too many people try to put everything they want to say on the slide.
Yes.
You should minimize what's on the slide, but say what you want to say relevant to that slide. But people fear they have to put everything they want to say on that slide. And I think that's bad practice.
I agree with you, David. Absolutely. All right, the next slide, I actually was on one of my customers' websites and they have a product that does water purification. And it showed this graph that had all of these numbers and arrows, and it was very confusing. And I took the graphic off of their webpage, and then I took the results that I figured out from the graphics and turned it into this slide. Simulation improves productivity, 9.4% improvement in throughput, and a 13.8% increase in available capacity. See how we can distill key concepts down to what is the main point. For each slide, one main point, okay? Here's a little helpful hint, by the way. After you've created your slide deck, what I want you to do is go to the slide sorter mode. It's on the upper control panel on the left side on PowerPoint. And it allows you to take an aerial view from 10,000 feet at the deck that you're going to be sharing with your audience. And what I want you to do is to take a look and go through each slide and say, what's the main point for this slide? What's the main point for this slide? What's this one? And then I want you to ask yourself, do I need all of these slides? Are they in the right order? Can I move them around? Is there any way I can simplify my message? And I'll take that one step further. You know, on the bottom of a slide that you've created, there's a box and you can put notes in there. I've seen people put paragraphs in that box, which causes them, when they're presenting, to be like this. They're reading the little mouse-sized print down on the presentation instead of making virtual eye contact with the audience. So here's my challenge. I would encourage you, for every slide you have in the notes section, what is the one main point for this slide? That's all I want in there. If you can synthesize that down, and if you've got 2 main points, break it into 2 slides. You won't get charged double, okay? So think about, how do I make sure I have 1 main point per slide? Put it in the notes section. Okay, So remember, we're designing slides to control the eyes and focus attention. So think of your slides as billboards, 1 point per slide. Optimize the canvas white space. Think about what old Al Einstein would have done. Use headlines, not titles. Then use builds and animations judiciously. I'm sure you've seen people flying things in this way and that way. That gets very distracting. And wherever you can, replace words with graphics, and then include short videos. And by the way, how-to videos are great. How not to videos are really good, because people look at those and go, oh my gosh, what is that? And they say, oh, you can then talk about how not to do something. And then highlight specifics and any data heavy slides, just as we've talked about. And then remember, less is more. Now, Adrienne, I wanted to get back to your question. So you're given a template, and I've worked with companies that do this. You have 15 minutes at the next meeting, and you have to use this template. Now, sometimes they'll even tell you that you have to have this kind of a headline, this and this. The best way I know to deal with that is, first of all, push back and say, is it okay if I add a couple of my own slides? And if they say no, then you're stuck, but that's good. At least you tried. Then I would say, first of all, make sure you're using headlines, because if you have to use the template, make it work for you. This is a case where animations are absolutely, or builds are really important. Don't bring everything up at once. If you must have a complex slide, make sure that you're focusing attention by having one thing come up at a time. Talk about it, make sure that's clear, and then go on to the next one. Adrienne, is that what you were looking for?
Susan, while we await Adrienne's response, I hope it's what she was looking for. We did get a question from another member of the audience, and that question is, any thoughts on how to adapt the style of slides when presenting to an audience for whom English is not their first language? I assume a lot of that would involve using images.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And by the way, one of the things I love about working with life science clients, which is what I've done for the last 20 years, primarily all life sciences, is I love the global nature of the business that we are in. And to that end, we need to make sure that we are not using jargon, that if we have TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, that we spell them out. We need to be very clear and precise in our language. We need to use as many images and examples as possible. But also, I would say deliver a little more deliberately and a little more slowly, so that people have a chance to translate, because that will help everyone. Okay, those are my tips for how to design clear, concise, and compelling presentations. And again, I so hope that many of you will reach out and we can schedule workshops. So there's so much more that I would love to share with you, but time is not on our side for this webinar. So let's go now, and we're going to move from the design part to the delivery part. So join me, if you will, on page 8. And I want to first talk about, how do you start strong? Your introduction in a virtual technical presentation has a lot of heavy lifting to do. Your introduction must capture attention and do what I call breaking mental preoccupation. People are going from Zoom meeting to Teams meeting to whatever meeting, and they barely have time to process what they just took in from the last meeting before they show up at your presentation. And guess what? Their brains are still on the last thing. So it's your job in your introduction to break that mental preoccupation. So you also need to establish your credibility and make sure that people want to listen to what you have to say. You have to make your objective clear, maybe even preview your main points, and then manage people's expectations. So that introduction, your start has to be really, really strong. First of all, you need to open with energy. Encourage people to have the video on. Thus, some of the things that you put in the chat box when we started today, you'll be able to see reactions. I like to have the video on because I can make a personal hello to everybody who's in the room as well. Smile. You've got a secret weapon. People tend to relax and feel more comfortable with presenters who don't look tense and uptight. And if you can relax, shoulders are down, they're not up at your ears, shoulders are down, and you're smiling, it makes people feel welcome. And then they are not taking on the attention that you might be bringing. Make eye contact. We've done this for 3 years now. You know where that camera is. Get your eyes to be looking directly into that camera. And then convey enthusiasm for the topic, for the fact that they carved out time for you. Be grateful that they're there and that they have interest in the topic that you're sharing. Be you, be personable, authentic, gracious. You are a host, by the way, at your own presentation, and we want to make sure people feel welcome in the presentation. So address them by name. If you're people in the audience who prefer their professional title, if you can find that out in the golden 15 minutes, that's awesome. Now, stories are a powerful way to start your presentation. I started with a story about Dave and Jenny. One was a great presenter, but didn't have much substance in the job. Jenny didn't have the skills that she then developed, and her career went places. So stories are powerful, and the best stories are character driven. They're around somebody who had a challenge, and that problem was overwhelming, and it was emotional, and you can evoke tension with stories, and that grabs audience attention. So make sure that if you can, and by the way, you are full of stories. And there are some fabulous stories in life sciences. And you're probably a natural storyteller at the end of the day with whomever you have the last meal of the day. How was your day? And you tell a story. So don't dismiss your ability to be a storyteller. Starting strong in that first 5 minutes, a couple of things. Engage the audience, a poll, a chat box, a question, an annotation. Just get them involved. Anything that they have to physically do creates that breaking of preoccupation and gets them focused on you. Also in that first 5 minutes, manage people's expectations. You want them to ask you questions? How much time are you going to take? And then tell them, expect to be included in the presentation. I'm going to be calling on you. So don't be surprised when you hear your name with a question. And then in your introduction, share that know, feel, and do. I think this know, feel, do is so powerful. Tell people right from the beginning what you want them to know, feel, and do. And by the way, bring it home at the end. Go back to that know, feel, and do. Now, I mentioned having the camera on. There are chemical reasons for this, and it's all about hormones. Hormones, yes, hormones. So when you have the camera on and you can make that virtual eye contact, it tends to increase oxytocin. It's a hormone we produce that increases social bonding. And it helps people feel valued, welcomed, understood, important. And then interestingly, also another hormone, serotonin, kicks in, and that's our happiness hormone. And when both of those kick in, the oxytocin and the serotonin, people tend to be more engaged with you. So feel free to do what I call R&D, rip off and duplicate this slide to encourage people. Sometimes you get pushback, oh, I don't want to have my camera on, and tell them there are chemical reasons why having the camera on is actually a good thing. Okay, a professor, a PhD, Amy Cuddy, ran into her work. She has, by the way, she has a great YouTube video. It's about 18 minutes long. And she did a lot of research on people's ability to affect others with their presence, with their body language. And her research identified that when we are confident and we use these behaviors, it increases our testosterone. And when our testosterone goes up, we're seen as more confident, trustworthy, and positive. Okay, also when we use these behaviors, our cortisol, another hormone, goes down. Cortisol is our stress hormone. So when that's down and testosterone is up, an amazing thing happens. We tend to thrive. This makes us more likable. People trust us more. It conveys confidence and competence. And it's also about our own self-awareness, our emotional intelligence, EQ. So it's very powerful stuff that Dr. Cuddy came up with. Go watch her YouTube video. It's great. So how do we take this and use this in virtual technical presentations? Well, a number of things. Number one, it's how you appear on camera. I want each of you to adjust your cameras so that you look like those very professional newscasters, or the guy that's on the image on the slide you're seeing right now. I want you to feel as though you're sitting at the virtual conference table, where you might have your arms or your forearms on the table and you can lean in, you're gesturing, and you're feeling very natural. So the way you accomplish this, get your camera so that your head is about 2 inches from the top of the little Brady Bunch box we're all sitting in here. So adjust that camera, and then you want to be far enough back from the camera that the upper part of your torso is visible and people can see your gestures. So think about that. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure your background, David has his blurred. That's a great thing to do. I've created a company slide for mine. If you've got a professional background, that's great. You don't need to do a thing, but you do not want your background to distract people. And by now you'd think 3 years into this virtual world, we should all know that. But I think there's room for improvement for a lot of people I still see on camera. So think about sitting at the virtual conference table. Make positive eye contact. Be looking in that camera. Use intentional expressions. Your face conveys so much. People can only read what they can see of your body. So what you need to share with them should convey your emotion, your message. Make sure that you're looking attentive, interested, inquisitive, confident. Good posture. I call it the 90-90-90. You should have a 90-degree angle at your hips, a 90-degree at your knees, and 90 degrees at your ankles, feet flat on the floor, sitting up straight. This helps you with delivery as well, by the way, because your diaphragm can be engaged more and you can deliver more positively. Then listen attentively. You're presenting, but you should be an engaging presenter, which means you're going to be asking questions. So when other people are talking, look attentive. Look as though you're really genuinely interested, and you should be, in what they're saying. And then be the gracious virtual host. Refer to people by name. Thank them for their interest, their input, their suggestions, their ideas. Make them feel comfortable. Okay, I hope you picked up a couple of tips on how to come across professionally on camera. All right, we've got a few minutes left, just in time to cover the topic of closing strong. We need to start strong in that first 5 minutes, engage people, get them involved, but we need to close strong, not just finish. I see a lot of people will say, well, we're out of time. Here's my last slide. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. Not a good presentation approach. Your closing should have a clear, powerful conclusion, not just an ending. Go back, repeat your know, feel, and do. Tie back to your opening story, if you would. Ask if there are any questions in your conclusion, and then close the presentation with the reminder of the which means that piece. Together we can solve this problem. And when we implement this solution, your topic, what you will see is our budget will not be stressed out. We'll have more leads in the funnel. We will have more customers at our trade shows. We need to make sure that that know, feel, and do is there. All right, that's the piece on deliver, your conclusion, achieves a presentation objective, focus the audience on the key points, and then make sure your final appeal is both logical and emotional. All right, there's a checklist on page 10 at the bottom, that last set of bullet points, on making sure that you've accomplished everything for your presentation. I encourage you, after you've created this presentation, go back and run through the checklist to make sure that it's all there. Okay, we've covered a lot. Just one thing before we leave today, I want to offer you a very special promotion for those of you who are joining us live, or if you're watching this later from the recording of the webinar. The SAMPS board has asked me to create a special offer for those of you who are SAMPS members or thinking of becoming SAMPS members. And by the way, those of you who have joined the webinar today who are not members, take David up on his offer. Join the organization, it's free. And for those of you who reach out to me, my contact information is in the workbook. We are offering a 15% discount on any clear, concise, and compelling workshop, whether it's the virtual or the in-person. And I'm going to throw in the book for anybody, for all the participants, for anybody who actually has a workshop. So I hope that sweetens the pot and that I'll hear from a number of you because I really do want to make a difference. I want to make sure that we rid your organization of dull, dry, and boring presentations so that they're all clear, concise, and compelling. David, back to you.
Okay, everyone, it's top of the hour, so we're going to sign off in a moment. I want to thank Susan. She tends to think in threes: clear, concise, and compelling, fix, accomplish, avoid, know, feel, do, problem, solution, result. So I don't know if that's intentional or what, or maybe three is a magic number, but you tend to think like that. So I really like some of those concepts. I also like the concept of use headlines, not titles. I think that's a critical takeaway that people should walk away from this webinar and start to use that immediately. So Susan, thank you very much, and thank you all for attending this this webinar, and we'll be in touch soon to talk about future SAMPS events. Thank you very much and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.